Greetings, Culture Warriors. It is I, Jeff Vieira, author of Culture is Everything, and your host for this latest Dispatch from the Front. Interesting story to get the juices flowing today. This is from Bloomberg by Noah Smith. The wealthy and privileged can revolt too. Plenty of people will tell you that the unrest spreading through the U.S. is rooted in inequality and the dissatisfaction of the 99%. But what if it's not that simple? What if there's also an important battle going on within the 1%? For the sake of the nation's survival, it's worth considering. No doubt people are angry. According to a recent Pew survey, 87% of the Americans say they're dissatisfied with the way things are going in the country. Partisan animosity has been building for decades and is now at a fever pitch, with incendiary rhetoric a constant feature of Twitter and other social media. Recent nationwide protests over police brutality and racism have been some of the largest and most widespread in the country's history. The rise of Donald Trump, a leader more polarizing, intolerant, and incompetent than any in living memory, is itself a sign of deteriorating national stability. By the way, I should note on here that this is an opinion piece. Okay, so it's identified at the outset as an opinion piece. Don't want you to think that as much as I criticize the media, that they are, in this instance, presenting that kind of commentary as straight news. Historian Peter Turchin, who believes episodes of unrest happen every half century or so, has a theory to explain what's troubling the country. According to Turchin, the basic problem is too much competition among elites. With more inherited wealth and more people getting advanced degrees, he reasons, there are more claimants to a relatively fixed number of positions in the upper echelons of politics, business, and other social hierarchies. With so many destined to lose out in the increasingly fierce competition, there is bound to be widespread anger and disappointment. By itself, this elite-centric theory seems insufficient. Many working-class people are also marching in the streets and voting for politicians with extremist views. But angry, educated, and rich people lend special weight to any revolution, since they are precisely the people who have the talent and resources to foment revolution and chaos. Ultimately, they provide the funding and craft the messaging for organized extremism and violence. Turchin's theory is all the more worrying because the number of elite spots has been shrinking in recent decades as a result of technological and economic changes. Wealth and income have become increasingly concentrated at the top of the distribution. In 1990, there were only 99 billionaires in the U.S. There are now more than 600. Even accounting for inflation, that's an enormous increase in the upper echelons of wealth. As inequality rises at the top, the standards for what counts as success rise accordingly. Having $10 million in the bank just doesn't command the respect it used to, when Mark Zuckerberg's fortune is 8,000 times as large. And structural changes in the economy are making it ever harder to reach the top tier. Across a broad range of industries, a few top companies are taking larger market shares. This might be because these companies are hoarding talent and intellectual property, because the internet has extended the reach of corporate behemoths, because network effects have become more common, or for various other reasons. Whatever the cause, winner-take-all markets seem to be proliferating. That means a few ambitious entrepreneurs will become Zuckerbergs while the rest are gnashing their teeth. It isn't just business where the top-level success is becoming less attainable. Consider academia. Many ambitious, young, educated people dream not of wealth, but of the intellectual respect that comes with a tenured professorship. But the end of the mid-century expansion of the U.S. university system. But the end of the mid-20th century expansion of the U.S. university system, along with more recent declines in state funding for colleges, mean that tenure track positions are a shrinking part of university faculty. This has happened even as the number of PhDs awarded has risen by more than 50% since 1990. So more smart young people are seeing their dreams of a research career sour into a reality of permanent precarity as adjuncts and lecturers. The same pattern repeats in the legal profession and in politics, where the size of Congress hasn't kept up with population growth. Smart, ambitious young people are told to compete ever harder for the plum spots, even as their efforts have a smaller chance of paying off. The danger is that eventually, how about having somebody aspire to be an editor or a writer and actually put sentences and words together in a way that makes grammatical sense. The danger that eventually all the frustrated aspirants decide that the system itself is the problem and seek to overthrow it. All right. I can't really take seriously anybody who doesn't take the time to write actual sentences. So we're going to stop there. You can read the rest of the article, okay? We've got enough of a gist of it to now apply our culture and values lens. And I would ask yourself this: what are this writer's values? What are they? What is their opinion of competition? Is competition a good or a bad thing? I think you'd have to say that one of the larger themes of the article is that we shouldn't have to compete for all this stuff. It should just be given to us. It's a ridiculous proposition for this reason. Number one, there's no evidence given that the number of slots, whatever that is, at the top, whatever that is limited, trending down, whatever. The fact is that, for example, you will have as many CEOs or presidents of companies as you will have companies that are publicly traded. You will have people running businesses as you have the number of those businesses. I mean, it's going to go up. Now, it's true that with the pandemic and with some of the business challenges that we've had, that as businesses go out of business, there are fewer opportunities to run those kind of businesses. So restaurants in particular, good example. If you want to be a restaurant owner, it's a tough time. It's a tough time. But I would note that in the article, he doesn't spend a lot of time talking about, much less commiserating, with the working class. The fact of the matter is that blue-collar jobs are booming. They can't find enough people to do them, not because they're poorly paid or compensated, but because they require skills. Do you want someone working on your car who has a Master in Fine Arts from Rutgers? Probably not. The problem we have, and I've referenced this before on the podcast, is that many of us grew up with the notion that a college degree from a reputable university was the ticket to the ruling class in America. You could be a Rockefeller, you could be a Roosevelt, as long as you got that college degree from a reputable institution. Period. Didn't matter what it was in. Now, that has changed. Society has changed. We've had a revolution in the form of information technology, and we have the area of Silicon Valley having basically replaced the old manufacturing zones now known as the Rust Belt. In the middle of this, in the middle of the century, we had the last century, I should say, we had a great revolution in manufacturing. As part of that revolution, we saw the rise of a managerial class. These were by and large middle class people who were technically competent and able to run large, complex enterprises. This likewise gave rise to a consulting class, doing the same thing at kind of the industry level. At the same time, we had the rise of the professor. Why? Because we had so much demand out there for these university degrees that it created a demand for professors to teach these kids. That bubble is on the verge of collapsing. Because at the same time that we were expanding the professoriate, we were also infecting it with alien Marxist ideas that are absolutely useless to society, except in generating unrest. We've certainly gotten the benefit of that. So as Mike Rowe is wont to say, why do we keep educating people to do jobs which no longer exist? It's insanity. But that is the situation we're in. And so how are you going to qualify to run a multinational pharmaceutical company if you've never gotten a biology degree? How are you going to run General Motors? Well, probably a bad example because God knows how they're picking them now. If you don't know anything about mechanical engineering. At least you should have a MBA, or I suppose at least a basic business degree. You need to know something in order to do these roles. It was funny. One of the companies I worked for, one of their interns asked the stupidest question interns always ask, which is, how do I get your job? And God bless him, the outgoing CEO was a little franker than most. And and he told them, well, you could start by 45 years of experience in healthcare distribution. Put them right back in their place, right? Because it's true. You have to know something in order to do something. And this particular opinion writer seems to think that these slots are just political positions. We're going to have 115 CEOs this year because this is what the Central Planning Committee has decreed. And so now how do we get those 115 CEO slots filled? Oh, we got to pick someone from this group and someone from that group. That's not the way it works. It just isn't. Unless you want a lot of more bankruptcies than we have now, you need someone who can actually run a company. And that typically requires a combination of great aptitude with great experience. Now, that's not to say that every CEO is a genius. God knows that's not the truth. But it just means that you have to do something to get there. And if you're not beginning that journey, you're never going to end it. So I would say that this opinion writer's sense of entitlement is quite high. And it's funny because he doesn't really talk about what I consider to be the real issue behind all this unrest. America is at odds with its would-be ruling class. Period. What we saw in those riots was the ruling class taking advantage of the cause of social unrest that they are responsible for and steering the outraged citizens to attack the middle class. That's what happens when police brutality ignites unrest, and yet the chief of police didn't sleep uneasy in his bed. The mayor didn't sleep uneasy in their bed. The district attorney didn't sleep uneasy in their bed, despite not prosecuting this particular officer who'd been up multiple times on brutality claims. The governor didn't sleep uneasy in their bed. But Minneapolis, downtown, was burned pretty much to the ground. And all those people that live there and all those people that work there and own businesses there, they didn't get any sleep. Those good middle-class Minneapolitans, whatever you call them, citizens of Minneapolis, citizens of Minnesota, Minnesotans, those good people had the mob sent on them by people like the police chief and the district attorney and the mayor and the governor. That is who stared them. You know, the people, we saw pictures during the riots of various political figures who've been keeping us under house arrest for months in many of these states, out with their arms around these people, not social distancing, with their masks off, not wearing the mask, just out there having a great time at the riot. And you have to ask yourself, how is that? Why weren't they afraid? If you're responsible for the system that ignited this outrage, and they are, how is it possible that they could walk freely among these outraged people, knowing that they wouldn't be targeted? They wouldn't be held accountable. They wouldn't be responsible. The answer is because they are the ruling class, and they were the impetus behind this rioting and this looting. They paid for it. They directed it. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. Would you go out and crowd surf a riot if it was triggered by something you were responsible for? Let's say you worked at a company and the riot was caused by the fact that one of your products was defective. Would you go wear your company t-shirt and hat and go out on riot night? I know I wouldn't. That'd be crazy. And yet they did. People not known for their bravery, by the way, for their physical courage. And yet they did. Would you go out in the midst of a pandemic that you've been warning people about for months and expose yourself to them? I wouldn't, unless I knew that there was really no chance I was going to get whatever it was. And yet they did. Moreover, they knew they wouldn't get criticized in the media for it. Because if they knew that they were likely to be criticized, they wouldn't allow pictures to be taken of them doing it. We have a ruling class that is out of touch with American values, period. And that is the reason for this unrest. Now, the mob can be fooled, they can be steered, and they can be suckered into targeting the wrong people. But at the end of the day, they're going to wake up and realize who's been staring them. Some of them already are. And then there are going to be a lot of slots opening up at the top, per this opinion writer's concern. Because they're going to take those people who are currently occupying those slots, who have abused their power and authority, who don't clearly believe in the nonsense that they spout at the microphone, and they are going to toss them out on their collective derrieres. Because that is what we do in the United States of America. Granted, it has been a while. We're a little bit rusty on tarring and feathering. It's been a while since we've lit the torches and taken up our pitchforks and marched to the governor's mansion to have a word. But that day is coming. And the anger is growing. And that is what the opinion writer is sensing. He just throws in a heaping dollop of his own frustration that his dreams of being, let's say Woodward and Bernstein, have fallen to ashes. The thing about society, the thing about the world, is things always change. Cultures change relatively slowly because the values that we used to are not exchanged so quickly. In America, we believe in freedom. And when somebody takes our freedom away, especially on false pretenses, especially on fear that they've created and magnified, well, it doesn't sit very well with many of us. We're a polite people for the most part. Much politer than we used to be. But politeness comes to an end. You saw it in California over the 4th of July holiday, where Mayor Gavin Newsom, one of this ruling class elite who has done nothing in his life except be anointed, Gavin Newsom declared there shall be no fireworks on the 4th of July. Right after he had extended the shutdown, the lockdown, yet again. After he sent his goons to go pick up people who wanted to look at the ocean. Not near anybody, just look at the ocean. Go pick them up, round them up, put them in jail. Don't worry, the jail's not too crowded because we're letting violent offenders out because we're afraid they'll get corona. So we've got spots now for people who refuse the diktats of this tin pot petty little dictator known as Gavin Newsom. But the people of California said enough and lit the skies up in glorious fashion in celebration of the 244th birthday of the United States of America, and to the applause of any soul in this country who still loves America. We are not sheep. We will not be driven like sheep. And still, in this day and age, Constitution be praised, still there are enough of us who are armed well enough that the price of enforcing these little utterances that spew out the masked mouth of these governors who would be tyrants, well, the price of enforcing those things is simply too high. The police, for all their alleged brutality, simply refuse in many districts to enforce such things. They didn't sign on to be the Gestapo. They're not the private army of the Harvard and Yale Alumni League. And so, yes, you will see a revolution. The ruling class wishes that that revolution would be steered by them. But they're going to find that it will be steered by ordinary Americans who have simply had enough. All you have to do in the United States of America to be an American is to hold American values. So what happens when the people who would lord over us clearly do not hold those values? What do you think happens? As we recognize that the people with their American flag pins in their lapels and their red and their blue ties on primetime television, the people like Nancy Pelosi, who took us on a tour during the lockdown of her glorious ice cream freezer stuffed with wonderful gourmet ice cream with which she was bearing up under the strain of the lockdown. Bought for, by the way, from the proceeds of illicit deals that come naturally to our corrupt congressional leadership. One of the best things Barack Obama ever did was make insider trading finally illegal for members of Congress. But not before Nancy Pelosi made her money that way. Not before Joe Biden made his that way. So that they could afford to buy such luxuries as those freezers taking up half of their palatial kitchens in their palatial mansions on the palatial grounds of their palatial estate. So that Nancy Antoinette could caution us about selfishness. No, my friends, the issue here is a simple case of an ossified, inbred aristocracy which can no longer claim with a straight, unmasked face to represent the people as a whole. More and more of those people are figuring this out. And as we truly embrace those time-honored values of America, you can bet your bottom dollar that there will be a reckoning. Because at the end of the day, tyrants, despots, dictators, they all come and go. But culture is everything. God bless you and have a terrific day.